Okay, so we are here trying to be funny. Maybe we really are, but looks aren't everything. All right, so now I'll introduce everybody at this humor panel. Okay, oh, there's feedback on this microphone. Can everybody just say hi and introduce yourselves? Allison?
Hi, I'm Alison O'Donnell, author of Stupid Cupid, where I chronicle 100 really bad, awful, I can't make this stuff up, bad online dates that I've been on, what I learned, so you don't have to suffer as I've done.
My name is Michael Battey. Does that sound sure? My book is called The Parent Trap Columns, and it's a kind of an anthology of columns I wrote for 8 years in many newspapers in the state, and put them into a collection. And it's sort of a reflection of parenting, how people my own age were raised versus the way we parent nowadays, with a humorous angle.
Hello everyone, thank you for coming today. My name is Will Hanson. I'm the author of All Women Are Bitches, a handbook for men. It's a humorous satire on the relationships between men and women. The book was published about a year ago. I am from Rhode Island, a member of ARIA, and I live in Cumberland with my cat and best friend Fanny.
Okay, and I'm D.R. Perry. I write more fictional stuff. I swear this stuff does not actually happen. We do not have people who turn into bears living in downtown Providence and going to a supernatural college there. I'm almost 100% sure of this. But I write about it anyway. Okay, so to get started, now that we know everybody's introduced themselves, I have some questions that I'm going to ask for everybody in the panel to take a turn answering. And then after that, we can open it up for questions from all of you guys who are so awesome and sat down to see us. So the Joker famously asks, why so serious? Well, I want to know the opposite. Why so humorous? What is it that made you want to write something funny on your subject instead of being serious? How's that to me?
To that I say, hey, why not? Life is funny, right? Crazy things happen. Sometimes we just can't make this stuff up if we try. So we write about real life events. In the world of comedy, we like to say, this writes itself, right? I didn't even have to try that hard. This stuff wrote itself. All I had to do was sit down and put it down on paper. And then I might let it sit for a week or two and go back and change a few words to make it even more humorous. But really, it wrote itself. So if you just let it out, we've got life experiences, and if we can't laugh at life, what have we got? What happens to us as a society if we can't laugh at ourselves, right? That's my answer.
Yeah, good.
I agree with Alison. I'm writing about children and parenting. And I think there's a tendency for parents, I know myself, to take it very seriously. And you get a little bit uptight sometimes with your kids. And you want the best for them, you want them to be raised in the best way. And I decided to write from a more of a humorous angle, just kind of comparing the way I was raised at times to the way that kids are raised nowadays. And I just think that humor is needed a little bit in parenting. And I think it's important for kids to know that you like them and not just love them. And they need to know that you love your spouse and like your spouse. And I just think that having a little bit of humor in it just adds perspective. So for me, being serious can be a little preachy. I'm a doctor. I write seriously all the time. I do a lot of public speaking and writing. And I just think it's nice to just take a different angle. And I think you can be intelligent with humor. So I think there's a role for that. And that was my aim, to try to get that message across.
Good. Good. So it lightens the load for you. Whereas, yeah, with Allison, it was more like, oh, this stuff is already funny, so let's just make it really funny.
Yeah, plus I have a different sense of humor, and sometimes I go too far. In fact, I usually go too far. And I made sure in my book that I didn't go too far. You know, it's when you write about your own children and patients, you know, you don't want to embarrass anybody. You want to bring up the moments and the episodes that are humorous, but you don't want to do anything that would make them feel bad. I was very sensitive to that, and I think I accomplished it. All of my kids still speak to me once a year, so I guess I wasn't too bad.
Oh, that's really good.
Speaking about going too far, if you're going to write a book with this title, it better be humorous, because if you start trying to be serious about that, you probably have a death wish. They won't let you live too long. You're better off taking a bullet. So, for me, there was no choice. I knew up front what the title was going to be, so obviously it had to be funny, I hope, and not offensive.
So that brings me to the next question, and maybe you want to answer first this time, because it kind of relates to that. We have to try to figure out how our books are funny, you know. So the thing about authors is we have this nasty reputation. We have this reputation of being loners and sitting by ourselves and loving our computers and nothing else, and being huge introverts who just want to maybe go to a desert island with a pen and some paper and just not go anywhere else or talk to anybody for a year. So with stand-up comics or other comics in performance are like Weird Al Yankovic, he knows when he's funny immediately because he gets an audience reaction. But if you're writing a joke and you go and you read it back to yourself, you have to ask yourself, is this funny? How am I going to know this is funny? How do you know when you're funny?
First this time? Oh, okay. I don't know, I just think that you have to have confidence in yourself. If you're going to write about humor, then you should have some knowledge of what's funny and what isn't funny. Again, have that confidence and move forward. But along with that, I think like you would have it edited or have other people look at it for content or whatever. The really funny lines, I don't think are going to be a question. If you have something very funny, you're going to know it. The ones that you're not sure about, I would say run those past somebody you have some confidence in and respect their opinions. And be open-minded.
I'm not sure that I have laugh lines in my book, but I do have episodes that I think are humorous. And I would read them and reread them to check for that and think about it a lot. And again, I know conversationally, I often make people laugh. And so I would kind of use that same sort of monologue or dialogue in my book and kind of retest it and test it. And I think it's worked out okay, but I think you also need to know yourself. You need to know your own sense of humor, whether you're a little acidic, or whether you're sweet, whether your humor is high humor or low humor. It could be aggressive or it could be reflective. And I just think it's important to know yourself and know your style. If you're not funny, and you really can't be something you're not.
I like what he said. You can't be something you're not. You have to be true to yourself. People will know if you're not authentic. If it's funny to you, you make it work. If it's not funny to you, how do you make that work? You have to be authentic. People will sniff that out. I wear a few different hats. I'm an English teacher, I'm a stand-up comedian, and I'm a writer. So if I were testing out jokes, stand-up comedy, I might go to an open mic night and test it out among my peers. If I were in the classroom, I would encourage my students to pass their story off to a peer and let them peer edit. But when I write things, I like to keep that surprise to myself. No one gets to see it until that book is published. So now what? I find it's really helpful if I just let things sit for a while. Write it, put it aside. 2 days, 2 weeks, heck, 2 months if you can do that. And when you go look at it, you're looking at it with fresh eyes, editor's eyes, and things just stand out. Wow, I could say this way, and it would be so much funnier. Why didn't I say it that way? It just stands out to you, it pops. I can change this, I have an opportunity. I don't have that opportunity on stage. When I'm writing, I can be as creative as I need to be in my time.
So, for me to find out if something's funny, I usually go, "Hey Jim!" And I tell the joke to my husband, or I read it to him, or I send it to him in an email in a form of like an anecdote. So he doesn't really know what's in the book. And if he's like, "What is this that you sent me? I don't understand." Okay, that's not going in there, or it needs editing. Having a person you can bounce it off, to me, is really the way that I do it. Like just one person whose humor I get and who gets my humor. Because you always, at writing, you're going to have an audience, and some people are just not your audience. And you have to accept that too when you're writing humor. Some people sometimes are just not going to laugh at what you have to offer because either they don't understand the context, or they're just like you were talking about low humor and acidic humor and sweet humor. Some people are just not into low humor at all, and you'll never make them laugh with low humor. No toilet joke in the world is going to make that individual crack a smile even. But, you know, maybe that person who can't stand the low humor loves sweet humor, and it's just, that's their thing. So they're going to love somebody else, and that's okay. You need to kind of be okay with that.
So I think to that point, you have to realize who your audience is going to be for your writing. I'm assuming that Will's audience could be a little different than mine, and as such, the text is going to be different.
Yeah. So, what is the best and worst? And try to keep it like, I would have said tweet length a month ago, but tweets are longer now. But try to keep it like about one sentence for the best thing and the worst thing about writing humor.
The best part about writing humor is that I get to make people laugh. That's the point, right? It's comedy. I want people to laugh. The worst part, not everyone shares the same sense of humor. When women read my book, they say, "Oh my God, you're freaking hilarious. I could not stop laughing." And sometimes men will read it and say, "You sound angry. I could feel your pain as I read." Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. Know your audience.
To me, probably the best part is I love judging. I think we do too little bit in society today. And so writing humorously allowed me to judge, but do it in a humorous way so I could express my opinion. We all have so many opinions today on politics and everything, child raising and whatever. But if you write seriously, you know, people can get bored very quickly. And there's that potential for that, and they might not finish it. I wrote in my preface that an old friend, Mark Patinkin, the Providence Journal columnist, told me before I wrote the book. He said, "Mike," he said, "I'm going to tell you something. People very rarely read your columns, anyone's columns, from start to finish, all the words." And he's right. You know, when I read his columns, I start, and if it's to me, his columns on Sundays are a little bit different than his family fun columns. If it's too serious, I go right through them. So I think writing with humor allows you to express yourself on many different topics and maybe get your opinion known.
Yeah, I think the best part is it's more fun, less intense. Whenever I was writing the book, I was never in a bad mood. It made me laugh, so that was a good start. The worst part, I don't think there's any downside, but the worst part for me was, because of the title, making sure that people did understand that it was meant to be humorous and not serious.
All right, so when we go back to that, is how do you handle a negative response to your humor? And I mean, I know I kind of laugh, or I say, "Oh, try reading Tolstoy." So your book's just not funny. Okay, try reading Tolstoy, then read my book again. It's funnier this time. But it's a snappy comeback is not always appropriate. So what do you do if somebody has a negative response to your humor in writing?
My grandmother always said, kill him with kindness. Treat humor with humor. If a man says, you sound angry, I say, me? I'm the least angry person I know. I'm a comedian, hello. It's called sarcasm. Wrong with it.
Well, if someone was offended by my humor, I would apologize. But if it's just not their cup of tea, then I would refer them to one of my co-authors here on the panel. You can't please everybody. I think people just have to lighten up a little bit and just roll with it. It's always about perspective. Mel Brooks said that the definition of tragedy is when he gets a paper cut on his finger. The definition of comedy is when you fall in an open sewer and die. And so it's all about perspective, right?
Yeah, I think that might have been easier for me because I had to prepare for negativity, seriously. And so I was well aware that some people are not even going to get past the title. But when they asked me about it, and actually I was surprised because I got fewer negative responses even on the title, even from women, than I did positive. But the negatives, I would just tell them that what's in the book is not what you'd expect from the title. And sometimes I would give a book. I say, if I give you a book, will you read it? And the first time you're offended, just put it down. So I was ready for negativity.
It's good to be prepared. And because it's good to be prepared, this is probably the most important question is, what's the most important thing you think a new humor author should know? The essential, you must know this. Let me pass on this knowledge to you before Okay, that's it. You don't get D.R. Perry's answer to that question because she's passed away. Oh, okay. But I'll tell you what I think first. The most important thing I think that a new humor ought to know is what I think every author should know, and that is you need to just keep writing. You can't edit, revise, fix, or run a non-existent draft by anybody. I can't yell, "Hey Jim," and send him a joke if I haven't written a joke. So I have to just bite the bullet and write the thing. I can't sit there waffling and wavering and wondering, should I write this? Should I write that? Where should I put this word first or that word first? What's the best opening line to write? Don't worry about that. Just start.
I've said this already, but be authentic. That's your name on the book. You have to be true to yourself. If that's what you're feeling, you put it on paper. It's going to be your true feelings. And if it is not authentic, people will know. If it is authentic, it's going to come across that way. People will sense that too. It's your name, your work, keep it authentic.
I agree. I think it's a type of humor that you're going to express that you have to know. And again, we all have different types of humor styles, and I think knowing your own style is very important. Myself, writing a book with laugh lines and jokes, I don't think would work. I like to come at it a little differently. My work is mostly satirical. It's humor talking about public commentary, trends, and doing something that makes someone feel like they're laughing because they can relate to it. But I'm not going for a punchline. So again, I think everyone's got to find that right style of writing that works for them.
I just think, again, this is more general, not just for humor authors, but I think any authors. The authors I know are pretty passionate about what they write. So start there and have the confidence in yourself to put down on paper what you're feeling, see what you think, run it by yourself, run it by others, and I think it's the best advice I could give.
So, is there, I wanted to leave some time for questions from the audience. So does anybody have a question for anybody here or everybody here? You can ask a question that you want us all to answer, or you can ask specific authors a question. Anybody? Bueller? Yes.
When did you know you wanted to be a writer?
I kind of knew I wanted to be a writer when I realized that there were actual writers, and it wasn't just books just existed. Yeah, so that's a long time. I'm 43. I believe I just told you that. Okay, no, but I'm 43. I'm not 29 again. I'm not. I'm 43. So yes, it's been a very long time. I've been reading since I was 3. So yeah, okay, 40 years, I guess. Yeah. Anybody else? When did you?
I've written all my life personally, mostly medical stuff, more serious stuff. So I just love it, and I get a lot of feedback that I'm pretty good at it. And so the idea of doing newspaper columns and humorous stuff, it wasn't that difficult for me to kind of morph into that.
How much time do we have?
We have probably 3 or 4 minutes.
All right, because I have a story about mine. I had no intention of ever being a writer or an author until about 3 years ago. I was watching the TV series Californication. Any of you see it? No? You did? Yeah. You did too? Okay, good. The main character in that series is an author. And about halfway through the first season, I was watching an episode and he was writing a book that had the F-bomb in the title. And I said, that got my attention. I said, that's interesting, a little controversial. But he always worked from home. He always had a glass of scotch next to him when he was writing. And the women were flocking to this guy like crazy. So I said, that's interesting. That looks like something I might want to do. So I sat down, came up with a controversial title. I wrote the book with a number of F-bombs in the book. Worked at home. I had the bottle of Jack next to me for inspiration. I had the book published. The only downside, the women are not flocking. I'm still waiting. But the Californication story is true. That was the day I decided to write, believe it or not.
All right, I have a story too. I'll make it quick. When I was 4 years old, my mom said to me, what would you like to be when you grow up? But she was the typical 50s housewife kind of mom. So when I told her I wanted to be a comedian, she said, women can't do that. What else? News to me. Okay, so I thought, well, I like to write. Maybe I could be an author. And she said, that won't pay the rent. What else? Now, defeated, I said, I like to push buttons. Maybe I could be a cashier. She said, yeah, cashier's good. I did all 3 things. When I was 8, my dad took me to the Library of Congress, and I stood there in this huge building in D.C., and the man giving the tour said every book in the world, well, not in the world, he said every book ever written is in this library. And I thought he meant it. Every single book ever is in this building, and I thought, oh my God, it's huge. I'm going to have a book in here someday. And I meant it. It took me 40 years, but I have a book in the Library of Congress. You can do it. Right? Woo! There you go, Mom.
And I don't know, that reminds me of something. When I was growing up, it was very similar. I was told girls can't be funny. And in the meantime, I'm sitting here watching I Love Lucy, Carol Burnett on The Gong Show,
Phyllis Diller.
and even Mae West when my parents didn't realize I was watching it. But I was looking at stuff and I was thinking, wait a minute, there are all these women who are funny. Why can't girls be funny? And they said, well, it's just not the kind of thing nice girls do. And I'm like, maybe I better start being mean. But that didn't work out so good, so I stopped that really fast. Because really, to me, humor doesn't require being mean-spirited. Some things are funny because you are lashing out, you're pointing cruelty out. And some kind of lashing out has happened, and you're like, okay, I'm going to point out the cruelty, and I'm going to jab at it, I'm going to make fun of it. And that, I think, is like probably a more satirical form of humor. But I really like to see humor where everybody wins. I don't like to write humor in my books that's really too mean to any other person. So I have a character, and he kind of makes fun of one of the other characters who makes fun of everybody. And she's all upset by it, but then later in the book she gets to kind of take a look at herself and say, maybe I'm kind of too mean. And it's a wake-up call. And I think if you use humor, and especially, I'm the only person who's writing fictional humor here. When you're writing fictional humor, it should be used as a way to reveal things about your character. What they think is funny, what they say that the other characters think is funny. It tells you a story, it tells you part of the background and the personality of the character, who's either the person making the joke or the person laughing at it or on the receiving end of it. So I really feel like when you put humor in fiction, that you ought to be using it to some purpose, and not only the purpose of making somebody laugh. You lighten the load of some serious material with humor by putting it there. It sort of helps the reader kind of float through instead of trudge through the subject matter. You take something that is normally maybe a topic that would make people very angry, and you go, let's take a feather and tickle it. And then you just take something that's funny and you go, how can I present this to people so that it amuses them instead of makes them just do this? Because we all want to do that when we look at online dating, whether we're male or female or we're actually dating online or not. It helps us to laugh, and I feel like I'm very happy that I'm up here and I see that there are 3 other authors in ARIA who write totally different kinds of humor, and they do it for different reasons, and it's all with a purpose. So I feel like, hey, I have some new books to read. I'm a relatively new parent. My daughter is 4. I could definitely use that book. I am not dating anymore, but I have some friends who are recently single, and I think I might want to give this book to some of them. Yeah, it is. As a matter of fact, did you know everybody up here has a book for sale? At least one? Okay.
Did you still have a question?
Yeah.
I have a question for Dr. Battey. Since you're writing about people, your children, and you said they're still talking to you.
Right.
And that's great.
Once a year.
Okay. When they were younger or in school and your comments were out, did they have any backlash or feedback from their classmates?
Yeah, that's probably a 2-part question. I'll be very honest. I never asked them their opinion because
They read the book? My kid did.
Yeah, well, they saw that. Well, see, they read the columns in the newspaper. But I felt really assured that I wasn't doing anything offensive or embarrassing. And I really enjoyed doing it. And I trusted the compass, I think, of my wife, that if my kids weren't comfortable with something, they would have probably let her know, and she would let me know, and I would have adjusted the temperature a little bit. I didn't, so I never really sat down to answer your question directly and asked them, how did you feel about this because I guess I didn't really want to hear an answer that I didn't want to hear. Because if I did, I wouldn't have this, and you wouldn't be sitting here, and I wouldn't have sold 1 million copies already. So I had no idea when I wrote the columns that the book was going to follow, but I do think that if, on paper it would have been nicer for me to sit down with my kids and ask them what they felt. But I think they were probably just a little bit embarrassed having their father every week in the newspaper anyways, and writing about their lives, that they would have had a general sense of embarrassment that might not have been specific to anything I did or said about them.
Like with their parents.
Right, because you tend to be embarrassed about your parents, period, the way they dress, the way they act, and everything. So. I'm sorry? Right. No, I don't honestly think I parented with humor that much, and this is my way of compensating. I think, given, like many doctors or type A personalities, you tend to live life a little bit in the fast lane, and you have certain expectations on behavior and progress and academic achievement and whatever, and so I would feel bad about that, because I wasn't as humorous or maybe as relaxed with my kids as I think I probably should have been, and so this allowed me to have that other self come out and try to show that. So I think they've seen that a little bit, because I think we all have an obligation to raise the best people we can, and we can take that seriously, too seriously at times.
Any other questions? Yes?
Well, thank you, but the next book will be a second volume. So they get a little older, the kids. When I started in 2005, I think the oldest was a senior in high school, and the youngest would have been 9 years old. And when I stopped 10 years later, I stopped because one was probably through with grad school, one was in college, and it would have been meaning that a lot of the columns would have been only on one child, and I just thought that was a little unfair for one child to be the subject week after week in the paper, besides patients and other things. So the second volume, next year, will be another 100 columns, and it's kind of similar to the first. So, yeah, the same themes. The kids are older, and I think you have to know when to stop a book. I don't have a book like the other authors here, so they had to make a decision. You stop it at 100 pages, 200 pages, 300 pages, what's the natural culmination? And with myself, it was each column was 2 to 3 pages long, so it was kind of decided for me. So, yeah. But I look forward to the volumes forthcoming from the other authors. That's right. If women are bitches, I don't know what I'm
I don't know. I don't know. Are you gonna write about me? Anybody else with a question, or or a comment? You could heckle us, or then you'd feel at home, right? So we have a few more minutes left, and I did have one question when I thought we didn't have enough time left that I didn't ask. And that was what? You tell me about the weirdest thing that inspired something in your writing. The weirdest. You can go first this time.
I just told you.
You just thought, because it was California.
Yeah.
But what, like, was there like a weird incident that might have inspired a particular thing you wrote in your book, or?
How about the title? How I came up with the title?
Okay.
When I was married, I was getting help for something. I don't really remember what it was. But, and my youngest son happened to be in the room at the time. So, trying to be humorous, to stop getting bitched at, actually. So I just in the middle, I just looked at Matt and I said, I gotta tell you a story. All women are bitches. And then I proceeded from there to talk about the bitch scale and stuff like that, which actually stopped my wife from bitching at me. She actually laughed about it. And that was the end of it, at least for that episode. So that's how I came up with the title, just based on that true life incident, another true life incident. And most of what's in the book is related to true life incidents. Most of it.
Probably the weirdest chapter was, there was an episode in the newspapers back in 2005, 2006, I'm not sure when, about two mothers of teenage daughters that got into a fight in Woonsocket. And I guess the mother of one child she felt her child had been unfairly attacked physically went after the other girl and her mother at a bus stop, and it was a news article in the paper. So I thought it would be kind of fun to hypothesize how that would play out in East Greenwich, given the demographics of East Greenwich, and sort of like the woman pulling up in a Mercedes convertible, pulling a golf club out of her car, and just trying to use all of the the common conceptions about East Greenwich demographics and people who belong to country clubs and live in mansions and all that kind of stuff. So that's satire. It's relating humor to contemporary events, and it got a lot of. It was well received. In fact, Mark Patinkin took that and mentioned it the following week about my column and his column in the paper, how much he liked that whole idea, and he used it to kind of spin off about different towns. Here's how they did it in East Greenwich, like Mike Battey said. Here's how they would do it in Cranston. Here's how they would do it in Barrington, and so that I thought was kind of good.
Alison?
I can't say that there's any one of my 100 stories that's, particularly weird. They're all weird. And that's when I said, you know what, this needs to be a book. I just cannot make this stuff up. And I know there are 100,000 people out there who are saying, oh my God, I've had some crazy horror stories too. I could write my own book. Yes, but you didn't. So yeah, some really weird things happened with people that I thought I had screened really well. My time's valuable. I'm not coming out to meet someone who I don't think is a match for me. So for me to have this many really bad experiences, that needed to be a book. You needed to learn the lessons that I suffered for you and wrote it down so that people don't have to suffer as I did.
Okay, so for me, the weirdest thing is I'm not even from Rhode Island, and often because of my appearance and the fact that I talk with my hands, I'm frequently mistaken as being from a particular town in the state of Rhode Island, and I am sure you all know or can guess within 2 or 3 guesses what town I'm talking about, and we're in it right now. And so,
It's the year too.
yes, well,
Big
they
year.
hear. And so I said to myself, I'm going to put this joke in the book of Wolf and Peace, because I have someone whose mother is from Cranston and has a very thick accent. So It said, Mrs. Redford's accent was deep Cranston with long nasal vowel sounds. Unexpected considering her hair was much smaller than most ladies from that part of Rhode Island. And I just wanted to use humor to kind of disabuse people of the notion that I'm from Cranston, because I'm not. But it's kind of one of the weirdest things that I kind of took from my real life and went, I'm going to put a diss and I'm going to make a joke about Cranston and hair and all the accents about Cranston, Rhode Island, where we make sure that we beware our mama when she has a wooden spoon in her hand. I can do the accent. This is why people think I'm from Cranston.
You're a good daughter.
Oh, I try so hard. I try so hard all the time. And I'm so glad that all of you have joined us here today at the panel on humor at ARIA for Rhode Island office. Rhode Island office. Not Long Island, not on an island, Rhode Island. Okay. Our time is up though, and it was great. It's been real. It's been fun.